In this video, we're gonna continue the topic of event budgeting. This time, we're gonna look at the schedule, the revenue you can make from the schedule, making sure that the whole experience fulfill all the promises you make to your participants, your talents, and all of that matching your cost structure. So treat this as a playground to sort of make all those components work well together until you get exactly what you want. All right, let's get started. So here we have the main schedule. This is the Saturday, Sunday program, and then you have the different groups that you want to cater to. If you have a smaller or bigger events, you just remove or add groups. Now, one of the things that is really helpful is to build the time table in such a way that you can easily play around with it. So you set the start date, and then you can easily say if this is gonna be shorter, the break is gonna be shorter, but this one is gonna be longer. Being able to see like what happens to your schedule as a whole when you play this game, so you have a better understanding of the consequences of your schedules, or an easier playground of sort of trying to optimize the schedule to create the best outcome. And ideally, if that's connected all the way through to the promise you make to your talents and participants and the budget that you're having, then it becomes easier to sort of refine your program as a whole. Then as you put in the teachers, for example, one thing you can do is to pay attention that the teachers, if they are in one room in one class and in another space in another class, and especially if these are in different buildings, that they have enough time to get there within the allocated time. And the more complex your event, the more you have to triple check this. One of the good things with the software we're building is that we're trying to put all of this inside of the software, the building of the schedule, the getting these automatic warnings of like this teacher won't get there in time, and all of these aspects where we are sort of building it in there. And the good thing there is like during the event, when there are changes, everybody get that information right away. So that's one of the goals we're having with it. But until then, start with a spreadsheet. And so as you played with the teachers sort of allocation of spaces, then you want to understand, is this fitting the promise you want to make to your participants? Do you want to give them almost 11 hours of class? Do you want to give them less amount of class? Maybe you want to shorten down the classes, increase the lunch break, for example. There's no lunch really planned into this schedule. So you want to optimize around that. And then all of that helps a little bit with understanding how do you price your event. Now, this is a tricky one because there are many ways to price, but what's good for you to know as part of a way to calibrate a little bit where you are with the price is to break it down per hour. So if you say 1 hour of class costs 8 euros or 30 euros or anything in between, or less or more, this how much it is up to your event, your community, your business or nonprofit, or how much sponsoring you have, how much you can take on the costs on yourself and not pass it on to your customers. So again, here all you do is play with it. So if it's 4 euro per hour, then you play with that, and then you probably then want to subsidize it through some sponsoring or something like that. Now, if you do that and you have all your costs here, I'm going to go over the other costs afterwards, but if you have all your costs summarized, so this is a medium to large event costs, just as a perspective for Chase Festival, for example, we had a cost structure that was over 100,000 euro, but that I would call that almost a mega event within the swing dance industry. In some other industries, that's still actually a medium sized event. But you have your cost here, and then you get a good sense of like, based on the price that you're offering and the capacity you have and the amount of capacity you think you can sell, you get a good sense of where your break-even points are, right? So based on, for example, here now, I've chosen very large spaces. If all of these would go down to, for example, 50 people capacities, right? So that's actually a 30 to 50 is many workshop classes are at those capacities, but then you have to pay attention like, oh, you have to now sell at least above 80% of your capacity at one of these higher prices in order for you to be able to recover this cost amount, unless you have some form of sponsorship paid for yourself. So capacity is one of those very important levers that we have. So when you are looking at what venues to rent, for example, don't just look which one is free or cheap. You need to understand based on the size that they're offering, and depending on the size of the event and the concept you want to provide to your participants, you need to use that lever in smart ways. Um, there's also other things, like for example, do you want to have party passes and sell those separately? How much capacity do you have for them? And for example, if people can buy the individual passes, remember, if somebody buys a lot of the Friday passes and uses up a lot of the capacity, it holds back from people who would buy the full pass, for example. So you want to be careful with all of these things, and especially also that those who buy the whole workshop again get the whole experience. They are also going to take the spots here, so it can really get complex. So you have to be careful with how you calculate and plan around these capacities. But you can include it. Right now, these costs are not included here. I think it was healthy to either separate them entirely, and then if you want your party to be able to hold on its own, so whatever costs you have with the musicians you're bringing, the DJs, the MCs, and stuff like that you're bringing, that is covering the revenue you make from the parties actually are covered for the expenses you have for the parties, or is it subsidized by people who are coming for the workshop? Again, decisions you have to make. Now, if we go back to changing the capacity here, okay, now you have a total set of capacities, just calculating the total amount available, and then you have the prices, and then you have the percentage of that capacity being filled out. And again, it's good for you to think of prices in gross, because that's what you're gonna communicate to your participants. They should have it in brutto in German and gross in English, but you need to think about your revenue in terms of net, meaning you need to take out your VAT. So I put it separately here because if you're a non-profit, your VAT situation is different than for a for-profit company, and also each country has their own VAT settings. So again, you pay attention to that. Whatever revenue you calculate, you need to take this VAT element out of it, so you look at the revenue that is actually yours. And you'll see that you have to balance the schedule you're creating, that makes sense in terms of the energy utilization for your participants, the number of hours of classes they are getting, the amount of work your teachers are getting. So for example, here these three teachers are getting significantly less than these teachers. Is that part of the agreement? Do you need to change anything about it? So you play around with the schedule until all of that is working out. And then when it comes to the actual pricing, is that fitting the demographic you would love to see at the event? Do you need to do any sort of exceptions or discounting or anything around that? And of course, then you have to include that in your pricing model. So you see there's a lot of different challenges that you need to solve in order to create an experience that has a good balance between creating the vision and the creative experience you want to design for your participants, as well as the amount of risk you're carrying. I recommend, for example, that you think of your break-even point at somewhere between 50 and 60%, and really budget around that. If you go anything above that, you're carrying a little bit too much risk, from my opinion. We know that, for example, as you do an edition several times, so like Chase Festival, we had 7 editions. So we start to grow very confident about our ability to bring a certain number of people to this event. And there are some expectations laid out for it. So when it came from after the 2019 edition for the 2020 edition, I mean, we we booked everybody and everything ahead of time. So everything was set, which is great because then you don't have to take care of everything afterwards. When the closer to the event you get, there are more other things that comes up, so you can take away some of that workload and or preload that, so to say. But of course, COVID hit, and now suddenly we sit on this massive amount of liability. And how do you get out of that? Now, so I suggest that you go somewhere where it's emotionally a little bit more comfortable. And if you hit that number way in advance, you have several months before the event is still happening, great on you. Then just go back and update your budget, add more talents, add more music, increase the decoration budget, subsidize drinks, food, whatever. Like, you can always circle back and improve the experience. And that's an amazing post to share on social media. And you get more reasons to bring good news to your participants or to your community, rather than coming to a point where you start panicking and you start being quite aggressive on social media. And yeah, you do that because you feel like you have no other choice. So look at these numbers also based on your previous editions. Now, I want to just walk you through the cost structure, the cost that comes in these columns. Now, we talked about the talents already in a separate video. Just continue listing anybody who has something to do with your event that you pay for in some way, whether you pay for their food, hosting, traveling, or they have rates that you have to cover for working. Just add the whole list here. You could consider separating between workshop and party if those are separate budgets. Then you do the same thing with the venues. Now, you could simplify this, but I wanted to make sure at least all of these words are here for you to see in order to understand what could go into your venue budgeting or venue planning. So obviously, start, end date, usage, venues, location information, capacity. These are quite standard and basic. If we hop over here to this side, if you have a previous experience with them, just put those in there. So planned is maybe the same, maybe you already plan to have more or less. And then of course, again, what is the real costs? Make sure you have the VAT out of it, and what status are you in? Have you reserved it? Have you not? And so on. Now, if we come back to this point here, where it's good to understand that there are many different things you have to think about when it comes to your venues. When can you do the setup? Do you have a complex setup? Do you need to get in there on the evening before, the morning before? Where do you get the keys? Who handles cleaning? Do they demand that you have an external cleaning company coming there and taking care of the job, or are they happy if you have some volunteers who do that work for you? What about light, sound, and Wi-Fi and things like that? And restrooms, again, do you need to bring your own soaps and paper towels and disinfections and stuff like that? What about noise pollution? Can you open the windows during the class? Do you need to do anything about air conditioning? Signs, first aid kit, insurance. These are things also depends on the size of your event. It's really good to always have somebody you can reach during the event or the day before and after the event, just in case something happens. So as you make the negotiations about the room, make sure that conversation is in there right away. But do you need anything else, like a snack table? Do you have some rules that you need to communicate to your participants? So you just copy this whole thing and just add it multiple times, and then you have your total costs for your venues. Now, again, this is a very complex case, and we especially use this when we were working together with Marcel Benedict for the first editions of Chase Festival. It was a collaborative event, so it was their association and our association and company sort of working together to do this. So there was even things about who is taking care of the bookkeeping, VAT, and bank costs of the whole thing. You might not need any of these things. But just before I dig into this, also here, do you have previous experience? So you want to put that information in there. Based on that previous, do you have any changes you want to do in your planning? And of course, what ended up happening? And something we're going to dig into deeper when I do a video about cash flow management during the event, where think about the bookkeeping process that you need to do after the event, before the event. I can't tell you how many stressful nights we've had where after the event we are so exhausted, but we need to complete the bookkeeping, invoices, receipts, and all of that stuff, and we realize what mess we've been creating. And that really has an impact on not only your energy, but frankly your legal status as a company or an association. You need to be able to manage that, so plan for that ahead of time. Now, if I just go down here, there are things around marketing. A general loss is basically like, it's depending on the size of your event, you should count on damage budget. So for example, for Chase, I don't remember, maybe it was like 10,000 euro we had as a buffer there. If you make something small, it's 500 euro, whatever. Like, this is something you have to calibrate based on your experience and size of event that you're having. Make sure your budget works with the buffer, and then it's just a positive feeling afterwards when you notice you didn't need to use any of that buffer, and you just have a little bit more revenue at hand. Office stuff, for example, if you have a lot of signs and decorations and things like that, you might need to store it somewhere. Maybe you can do it in your garage or attic, but sometimes maybe you need to rent something for that. IT system, of course, I will be delighted if you choose full event for this. We're not 100% ready yet, but when we are, a lot of these things will be already implemented. We're building it based on all my experience from organizing these events. Royalty fees for music, make sure to take care of that, especially if you, no, just take care of it. There is no especially if, you will be caught. You don't want to get caught. It's pricey, it's stressful. Just take care of it. Put it in your budget and make sure it's there. Visa management, if you have people coming from other countries, whether they are your talents or guests, you might need to consider that. Other costs around that. So just go down the list. Maybe you need to add your own things. Maybe a lot of it is overkill for you, perhaps. So you just think all of that. And then, you update these sheets. Right now I haven't connected these. There's no formula behind these ones. There's formula around most of these things. So if you want to have these templates, just PM me. I'm happy to make a copy for you. And basically use this as your playground to really understand how to create your experience in the best possible way when it comes to, again, the experience you're creating, the promises you're making to the different people, as well as the risk and the budget that you are carrying. Getting this right needs a lot of fiddling. This is not an easy thing, which is also why I always offer to help you with this process a little bit. So I'm not a consultant or anything like that. I'm not gonna ask you a consultancy fee for any of these things. I just like to learn how you deal with your things, so I can put that into the software, and hopefully that will be the thing you choose to purchase when we are ready. But until then, join the interest list we have over here, and hopefully we stay in touch. All right, until the next one.